Hey, folks. Wow, this is a great turnout. Thank you all for coming out. I have the great pleasure of welcoming Jessica Femiani, whom I've known for a lot of years. Originally in New York, with the Italian American Writers Association, and later at Binghamton, where she got a PhD. Yeah. So there are a lot of things I know about Jessica. I'll tell you some of them. She is a scholar in addition to being a poet, so she brings that to the table. And I'm sure the research for this long poem, "The American Gun," was kind of exhaustive. It's like I meant to do a little research to prepare to talk to you, but I of course didn't get to do it because I'm lazy.
You know everything that you need to know.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's funny. My wife said to me last week, "You're exactly where you need to be." I don't know what that means, but okay, you know what you need to know. Okay. So, Jessica, this is Jessica's first chapbook, right? "The American Gun" from Finishing Line Press. And she is currently working on a full collection, right? And you told me it's named after an amusement park in the Bronx.
Well, that's coming next, because I turned the one of this is a part of this at the foot of the volcano.
Oh,
That's
so
gonna come much soon.
this ultimately will be called "At the Foot of the Volcano," and the next one will be called "Freedom Land" after the amusement park. So there was an amusement park called Freedom Land in the shape of the United States.
In the Bronx.
In the Bronx, where
Cold City.
there is now a giant housing development on top of it. Of course, there is.
Also in the shape of, yeah.
Also in the shape of the United States. Thank you very much. Yes, we don't miss a beat here. So I'm just gonna get Jessica up here, ask her to read and just say, it's wonderful to have a longtime friend here. And I hope you enjoy the work, and I'm sure you will. All right, and then of course, we'll talk to Jessica afterwards, and I know we're gonna have a pretty one with the open mic tonight, so I'll keep the brief short. By the way, her book, "The American Gun," is over there by Carol. $10. A bargain. All right, thank you, everybody. Jessica Femiani.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you everyone for coming. This is a terrific crowd and I'm excited to read for you and to hear you in open mic. I actually got my start as a poet, going to open mics. There was no intention of any of this happening. So, so open mics are a great way to go. I was thinking I would start with a light poem. This poem is called Tangential. We can't see it, but it's the shape of the poem that actually goes like a tan all over. But I'm reading this poem because I have following George a little bit through the years. George went to the CUNY Graduate Center. He wrote his dissertation. I don't know the exact title, but it was on Italian American masculinity, the poet and the peasant of the pen. And in the introduction, he talks about the theme of tutto al posto, which in Italian means everything has its place. And so this poem brings that out. It's about my mother. Starts out like so I'll just get into it. At my mom's retirement roast, her fellow teachers are enacting my mother's lunchtime ritual. First, she'd unfold a paper napkin, lay it down flat, then unpack her lunch, her sandwich, an apple, a yogurt, a spoon. Kind of like on this visit, she has laid out her outfit for tomorrow. A cotton knit shirt, khaki pants, underwear, a bra, and socks, all neatly folded, tutto al posto, everything in its place. Just as tonight's nightgown has been unfolded, is laid out, resting on the pillow, her slippers on the floor. On this Mother's Day, I arrive with a card a pot of salvia merlot blue, a shea butter scented candle, and 2 loads of laundry. My mother tells me she and my father sat on this bench in Puglia talking to a little old woman so tiny she could have been her grandmother. They sat chatting for hours, words my mother said she didn't know. She knew. They flew from her tongue. Last Wednesday, I walk into Paul and Son's pizzeria, right behind a man whose sleeveless shirt was so open it had to have been cut by hand. I noticed the swell of his ribs, his tan skin tatted with lines, arrows, darting, roaming down his forearms, his wrists, hands, fingers, and knuckles too. The darkish green, the darkish blackish teal blue ink bleeds like that of an old sailor's tattoo, like that of my great grandmother's portrait that wrapped about my great grandfather's arm. Taking a seat at the table, at the communal table, is something I've not done in all these COVID years. But today I want to eat my slices crisp and hot. I want mozzarella melting strings like cat's cradle. I pull off my bag, hang it on the chair, only then to watch as all the cards of my wallet, my license, credit, debit cards, insurance, all fall to the floor. I blow hot breath up my face as my arms extend, hands wandering, and then 2 vanilla mint chopsticks, several stubs of colored chalk, cascade of pennies, nickels, dimes. All my laundry quarters spill to the floor from the pockets of my denim jacket. The guy with all the tattoos, who I think works construction, will soon tell me he's in his office today nearby, seated with 2 slices, the pepperoni gleaming olive oil red. He then gets up from his seat halfway, a sort of symbolic gestured assistance I find endearing. Before the conversation turns to his girlfriend who is vegan and has just opened a cafe, he tells me he can tell, he knows I'm having one of those days. We'll just jump into this poem, The American Gun, that I wrote. And I would say that I wrote most of this poem before the pandemic. I think it was almost, it felt like every single morning I was waking up to the radio, another report of another mass shooting. And I actually taught middle school English in New York City for 8 years in Corona, Queens. So that school makes its way into this poem. I think we'll just get started. I should say it's in 10 parts. This is part 1. My great grandfather was born a serf on land barrens. His wife, my great grandmother, she said the land was cursed, the riches of the waters reserved for the sons of families noble. I know the story about a boy, Antonio, my grandfather. One day he reached high above a wood-burning stove. The muscles of his left arm stretched long and lean. Just as his fingertips grazed the shells of hard-boiled eggs stowed high, his right elbow dipped, submerged. The water rolled a fast boil. For the rest of his life, the skin of my grandfather's elbow showed a pale pink, a gloss chap, from which not a single hair grew. 2. My grandfather was a plumber, a foreman, a Democrat, a proud Union man. Built like a bull, he hauled cast iron tubs up flights of stairs. When my mother divides his wares, we each receive a mini leather bound booklet, pages full of rust red stamps, stamped dues paid in rows gathered in groups of four. My mother, she remembers that NRA leaflets would arrive in the mail each month, pages devoted to the pursuit, the chase that is sport. The hunter pumps the rifle, pumps bullets to the chamber, shoots the deer fair game. My grandmother, she cooked it all, venison to squirrel stew. I can still hear my grandfather as he licks his lips, sucks the bones dry. Three. I stand on the platform at 103rd Street and Corona Plaza, and I want the school day gone. I fall in love with ugly and old, the textured peel of old bricks gessoed white, the fate of ads, factories, services, all past due. Here on this platform, the billboards, both scenes of the summer's blockbuster hopefuls, all woven in threads of iron and steel. I think of this amendment penned to arm pioneers in the wilderness, militiamen. They band together on foot. And I think about the middle school boys I teach, the crumpled papers I find in the garbage, shoved in the back of their desks, the finest jet black inked line drawings, drawn as delicate and elegant as lace. Hatched lines ennoble a masculine zeal for a mysterious skin. Gunmetal cold, black, blue. Or on the drive to Wegmans, I groove to Dar Williams. Southern California wants to be Western New York. At the red, my eyes land on the truck just ahead. The dark tint of its back window contrasts the white stenciled silhouette of a semi-automatic. Below in clean white cursive reads, "Come and get it." A slight chill curls the warm autumn air. I follow the truck as it parks. Watch the driver, this tall man, with his legs long, his strides strong. Watch as he shops, bags apples, picks out a few pears, watches as he glances at the list in his back pocket. I can't help but notice the complete calm of his reserve, the thin of his lips, without the subtlety of a curve, just dense, reddish, golden hair crowding his mouth. On the sunniest of December afternoons in Corona, Queens, I'm walking down the 7 train on National Street. Like always, I passed a Buddhist temple, and it is likely a fat stub of incense is burning pine in a well of sand. I can't remember details like that now. Kind of how I can't remember if all the shoes were laid outside of the mosque that I passed next. The mosque I believe is the same mosque I once read Malcolm X founded. Past the commercial laundry, a bodega, the Jehovah's Witnesses hall, all the places I know. The taquerias, the Colombian bakery where I buy homemade hot sauce. On this 14th of December, I hardly take notice. I'm sweating too much. Having thrown my jacket over my shoulder, on the phone with my mother, we're trying to piece together what happened. I can still hear the high-pitched squawking of the crows high in the treetops as my mother tells me, this young man's surname is a beautiful Italian name, like a famous opera singer my grandmother once loved. This young man, my mother tells me, he shot 18 first graders execution style. Sky blue walls, glazed pomegranate red, and molasses smears. The next day, I do the unthinkable, try to talk the untalkable, to the stares of blank that belong to the children who have been my students the last 2.5 years. I can see their faces, complexions of rich cocoa butters, golden honey, jet streams of thick black hair, their dark brown eyes searching. They don't talk today during the announcements, even as our principal announces all that we already know. A moment of silence is had, and he says, the entire staff of IS 61 and all its students will be keeping the students and teachers of Sandy Hook in our hearts and our prayers. But we must all remain vigilant. Do not open any doors, he says as he hesitates, for anyone under any circumstance. Ramon asks me, what if we clean out that storage closet in the back, make it into a fort, a hideout for our class? Stock it with phone chargers, bottles of water, snacks. The voice on the intercom drills soft lockdown, hard lockdown. Those already locked classroom doors standing open at the ready, slam them shut, hit the lights, cram kids into coat closets, under desks, away from the windows, count rosters. That child crying out in the hall, leave that child behind. I will mention that in the very many trainings that we had for these lockdowns, the teachers were instructed that once you lock that door, once you close that locked door, you are not to open it for anyone. 6, the year I graduated high school, when fire drills were nothing more than a break from class, the world birthed a boy given the middle name of Storm. As a child, he was said to stand apart, staring for hours at the flat of bedroom walls. Happy he was to talk casual of his dreams to kill. Swayed by Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church's easy entrance, its evening Bible study underway, this young man found Black parishioners, young and old, sitting round with eyes closed, hands folded in prayer. The lead preacher, a young senator, my age, married with 2 baby girls, pulls out a chair in welcome. An invitation for this young man to close his eyes, fold his hands in prayer. The warmth, the kindness of the parishioners almost convinced this young man to abort. This young man believed Black men were taking over the country, that Black men were raping white women, not having ever learned that Black men have never made rape a practice, as our founding fathers did. The rape of Black enslaved women. This young man's moves were fortified in cyberspace. He chose 88 bullets, 88 hollow point bullets, designed to expand catastrophically, exponentially within the body's tissues. Seven. In the next time of too many, the shooter clanged bells, blew whistles, honked all the horns, squashed the squeaky wheel. This young man chose St. Valentine's as the day of all days to pump lead at school. Stoneman Douglas has been left 17 down. They show what happens when kids are taught smart, how the young can see straight. They stand up, they call foul, they keep the call to foul on a world of men consumed by pockets thick. These men old, they don't think to heed the ways of a woman wise. Maybe they hadn't heard of New Zealand. After 2 mosques in Christchurch are gunned down, 51 Muslims slaughtered mid-prayer. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, she wraps her arms around the people, leads a parliament divided to negotiate, then legislate a ban on the country's military-style weapons. All assault rifles, its semi-automatic rifles, the high-capacity magazines, all banned. She did that in 6 days, actually. Debating whether I should read the whole thing. How am I doing with time?
You're okay, another 10 minutes or so.
Okay. Eight. This time, the shooter posts a manifesto of hate directed at our brethren, Black and brown. Before driving 48 hours cross-state, ramming his fearless heart of hate amidst aisles of a Walmart in El Paso. For the love of God, wasn't Texas stolen from Mexico anywho? This time of next, the shooter brings vengeance underground, rich red splatters off subway tile in South Brooklyn. My sister marks herself safe. This time, every time of too many, young white men rage. We cannot comprehend the slaughter. We cannot make meaning of this magnitude. We do what people do. We enact life's doing, the cooking, the cleaning, the loving, the working, the schooling, the supermarket, a shopping mall, an elementary school, a movie theater, the mall again, another mall, a nightclub, a college dormitory, high schools, grade schools, this parade, that concert, this state, that state, every state, 3 shootings in the same state, the same week, 10 dead, 12 dead, 25. We want to put our baby to sleep. 5 dead. The man said if he'd known, he wouldn't have sold him the gun. Nine. What is to be said if men salaried with guns, gear, and protections massive, if they too are afraid? If they stand outside Robb Elementary, fumbling over the chain of command while the shooter shoots the babies inside. The parents in Uvalde had no bodies to claim. A cotton swab to the cheek identifies their remains. I spend most of my time in my apartment these days. If I decide to run out for a carton of milk, I worry this could be a bad time. Might this be the same time another young man in America decides to make his descent? If this is my adult mind, I can't begin to imagine the dreams of the children asleep in their beds. Bedtime prayers become urgent pleas. Please, God, please don't let me be killed at school tomorrow. Please watch over me when I am in church, playing at Mikey's house, at the Garlic Festival, in the mosque, the synagogue. Dreams that haunt, disrupt the sleep. Baritone yells cut the night. And I have spent precious time worrying how I might bring this poem to a close. even more worrying, this helplessness will persist. We've been in it for so long, walking backward. What is a country that cannot protect its people, its children? What then is the future? How is this freedom, America? For the longest, I've not known where to look, but my eyes now fall on the shoulders of the youth. The young people drilling since they were born, having watched classmates and friends and teachers dying in pools of blood in classrooms and cafeterias across this land. The young adults, they've got it. They've got verve. In the high heat of summer, they took to the streets in hordes, their legs traversing the nation, chanting beneath masks masking breath, chanting Black Life Matters. With voices hoarse and throats sore, chanting no justice, no peace, chanting still into the streets. Chanting and marching for this life, our lives, chanting for the living and breathing, a revolution of being.
Open it up, questions for Jessica. What was your inspiration?
I think a lot of it had to do with, when I moved to Binghamton from New York City, and, I was a little bit of like an older student in the PhD program, and I was not teaching full time anymore. And I think I had I always think about contradictions. I write about a lot of the issues. That's kind of what I do. And I think that the descriptions of the drill, the lockdowns, that really has stuck with me always. And the absurdity of it all. So, I mean, like I was telling George before, for me, titles always come first. And the American Gun kind of just came to me, and I wanted to acknowledge the riches of hunting culture. As you can tell from the poem, my grandfather grew up very hungry. I have another poem about him. It's, he grew up in Depression era days, and he would tell us stories of stealing peaches and to fill empty bellies. So he loved to eat. He was a man who relished to eat. And my mother's a storyteller, and she always speaks of all the things that, he would bring home from his hunting trips. Which is fascinating to me because he would come up and go past the Roscoe Diner and then all the way east, but there were no throughways then. So a very different time up here. I don't know if I answered her question,
And thank you for it. I'm actually the victim of a gun crime. I was held up at gunpoint, actually here in Dansville back in 2016. So thank you for the book, it's amazing.
Thank you for sharing that story, and you're welcome, and I kind of have this idea, and I kind of think that everyone needs to write their American Gun poem, because I think everyone has stories to tell.
So and it doesn't, not a big change, but my daughter said that, so when she became a teacher at an elementary school, it was in the poorest district, but the poorest school in the poorest district of Rhode Island. And she said that the new thing is, and they train the kids, is to, and they actually, I mean, it's still sad that they have to do this, but everybody is supposed to run around. And when the quote shooters came out, they have like something that, like, it's, I don't know what it is, but it's sort of like targets with a lead or what. But in that simulation, like in her classroom, only one kid was shot because they ran around. They were all told, just run in the room.
That goes against the grain of what most schools have, though. They laid out,
Yes.
you sit in a corner.
Right,
you
right.
know,
And
you're
everybody's
outside.
there hiding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not up to date with the current.
And this was
Really?
like 3 years ago they did this,
Yeah, it sounds.
but it still shouldn't happen.
Right, it sounds a little bit like hysteria, to be honest, but I'm not surprised, you know,
I remember the riot, so I grew up and went to school at T.C. Williams, which we remember the Titans movie. And, but luckily back then, the biggest thing was one kid stabbing one of them, the social studies teacher with his pick, and the teacher needing to go to the hospital, and there was rioting, but again, I'm so thankful there was no guns. Nothing to do with guns, and it just doesn't make sense. Yes, but it doesn't.
Do you have any comment maybe regarding what you think might be the psychology about this alienation perhaps that the nation has, this, what do you think lies behind this tragic situation? I mean, the world is screwed up, but is there something specific perhaps you see that's driving this sort of madness? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if I can really answer the question, but I'll give you some hunches that I
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
I mean, there are other nations in the world that do not have these problems. When I did do a lot of research for this poem, reading about a lot of these young men and their lives, reading like Newsweek, Time magazine, just as many periodicals that was really going into the history. I watched hours of footage on YouTube of the Nicholas Cruz trial, and I mean, some of these young men have never even been given a chance at life. I mean, Nicholas Cruz's life, if I told you the details of his surroundings, where he grew up, I mean, it was just horrible. Really, really entrenched poverty, leading his mother to do very desperate and dangerous things, in the presence of her children. So to me, it's no wonder that it happened. So I think, there's lots of,
Yeah, there's lots of it.
I always go back to the P word. There's so much poverty. I mean, at the same time, many of these young men did grow up in middle class families like Dylan Roof. I haven't written, I have written other parts. And I kind of obsessively rewrite things. So there are things that are not in the book, but like in the in response to your comment about no guns, I mean, Emma Gonzalez, she just said it, you know, she was like, we wouldn't have been able to kill that many people if he had a knife. And it just seems like, it seems too easy for young men to get these semi-automatic weapons. And, you know, Bill Clinton was the one who signed the repeal of the ban on semi-automatic weapons in 1994, which is when I graduated from high school. So I kind of have another poem that's kind of like my before Columbine, high school experience. So, I mean, I think it will take a lot of things.
I can recall, it was back in the 1990s, but I was in Virginia, I was buying it, I was at Kmart, Walmart, someplace like that. I was trying to buy an out-of-state fishing license just for a few days, but I needed to go through this computer with the paperwork that entailed quite a bit of time. Well, right next to me, there's a dad with a son who is actually buying a semi-automatic gun, and it took less time for that sale to go through with a gun for a kid or a young guy than it took for me to get my license for fishing. For fishing.
Yeah, I mean,
And they walked out with the guy, they walked out.
NRA agreed.
well, right, the NRA
It's really solved that whole problem. NRA.
is a very powerful lobby. I've wanted to do more research about that. I mean, I did hear I watched a YouTube video of, I don't even remember, I think it was a Colorado senator at an NRA convention, and like the psychology of the obsession with guns and this supposed history. Like the senator was like, the founding fathers were armed, and everybody's like, well, like this brouhaha. And, they weren't armed with semi-automatic weapons.
And they rejected having semi-automatic weapons at one point when they wanted to make them legal, because they said no real hunter should be using a semi-automatic weapon. If you don't get it on the first shot, then you don't deserve it.
There's kind of an interesting cultural dynamic at play and psychological dynamic here, I think, too, and I'd love to hear what you think about. So I once asked, I won't name the prominent leader of this community, but I once asked a prominent leader of this community, you're a hunter, why do you have semi-automatic weapons? And his answer was, because I can. And he said that very defiantly. And I think that's something that the NRA has had a lot to do with promoting that. There's that's a whole history of the 1970s and response to counterculture in the 60s, and we could go
Yeah,
further.
yeah.
That object of the gun is fascinating to me as a writer, as a poet. When I was a kid, my father loaded his own shells. He was a hunter. I was just fascinated by that gun, which seemed like untouchable to me at 10 years old. It was like a thing that it was completely verboten to touch it without someone there. There's a whole process in the wall that I seemed totally mysterious, and so it's amazing that there would be 12, 14, however old they are, boys. It's just like, oh yeah, of course. A gun, sure. We'll just get one of those. Right. If something has perhaps shifted in the culture.
Yeah, I mean,
About knives in Scotland. You're not gonna kill as many people with a knife. That's right. Guns, give them all a sword.
teach them fencing in gym.
I also think when you're a victim, because what happened with me, I was working at there's actually a Radio Shack here in town, we still, if you remember the Radio Shack, we're still here. The guy slid a pack of batteries across, opened his coat and cocked a shotgun, a pump action shotgun and pointed it at me, it's an empty drawer. And when you experience that, I think it changes you where it's like, you know, I grew up in the house, my dad, on cabinet, and all these type of things. But when you experience that, it kind of changes it a little bit, where it's like, you just have a different perspective when you have, you know, and you have that experience where I could have been dead, and as, you know, he's like, walks me back to the store, and I saw his face. So as I'm walking back to the store, I was waiting for the gunshot and to be dead. So I think that, you know, that experience, it changes you culturally too.
It does, but it didn't make you wanna shoot other people.
No, maybe not like unbelievable one. Yes, yeah.
Do you, as a result, do you notice any different, like you?
I just don't, and you know, it's funny, I mean, you know, my friends know me as a crazy liberal, but that's not why I don't like guns. I don't like guns because I have one pointed at my face, you know, so that experience, so that's kind of why, like, when, you know, I saw the stuff for this and heard about it. Yes, I'm so excited for this.
It's beside the point, was the fellow apprehended or no?
He was, actually, he was, what was happening was, his girlfriend was driving the car, and he would pull down the back seat and climb in the trunk, and that's how they got through like the police barricades. They caught him like 1 or 2 jobs after mine, and I actually had to testify before a grand jury, which was the scariest, and I love police, you know, cop movies and stuff, it was the scariest and the coolest experience at the time. So.
And I think when I first heard the title of your book, it's over like, yeah, I don't wanna listen to this, but it was amazing. It was so real and down to earth and descriptive, it just really and truly pulled out all those emotions that you have inside of you because of this problem.
There's
Yeah.
kind of, just, I know it's like what we're talking about is kind of fascination in the voice. It's a very plain spoken voice, but there's a kind of attention, like hyper attention to detail that is a little unusual in poems. It's almost, it is, so, I mean, it's fascination, that's the best word I can come up with. And you call it the American gun, not American guns. Applying kind of focus on the object. What, so I mean, maybe you could talk about this poem or just generally, what's, you have to be fascinated by a subject to write about it. I'm sure that came first in this case. Is that necessary for you?
What came first was the idea, and then like the story about my grandfather's history, and that was like, those came first, like really quickly. The first 5 parts were written in the first year that I wrote it. But I mean, I think I have a mind that ruminates. You know, I don't know, it's not necessarily the best thing to have at all times, but I think there's like an obsessive quality about it, and that kind of facilitates all the specifics here.
Is that a Winslow Homer image on your cover?
It is, it's a watercolor,
Yeah,
beautiful watercolor.
Reminds
that he
me of-
made.
yeah. Is he in a boat, or the subject in a boat?
It's a deer on a rock in
Okay.
front of
Okay.
like a body of
Yeah,
water.
Homer, yeah. He painted a lot of water scenes.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting, the name of the painting is, I believe it's in the book, but it's A Good Shot, the Adirondack.
Couldn't help noticing, there's some things you return to as themes. One of them was race and guns. What do you see as the connections?
I mean, I think there are many connections. I don't know if I draw upon all of them in the poem, but I think aspects of the poem come from like dissatisfaction and annoyance with the media and how they, I mean, I don't know, they're supposed to be objectively telling stories. I don't know, objectivity is a really hard thing to, but I guess I'm just I'm so tired of hearing this,
Thoughts and prayers,
yeah,
Not put the thoughts and prayers, the damn laws. Take the damn guns away, the Australians took the guns away, turn them in. Let's turn each other in, the people that are cheating with their guns, let's get it over with, have adults shoot adults, stop shooting children.
yeah.
Let's call the racism what it is, it's racism, and it's white entitlement, let's get over it and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with a lot of those points, and I don't have like a complete answer, but the fact that we have mass shootings every day in the US, right? There actually used to be a column that the writer Joe Nichera from the New York Times used to write a summary of all of the shootings that happened in the country every single day. It was madness.
There's more deaths since 1970 than all of the foreign wars combined. All of our casualties from the American Revolution on, there have been more killings since that time period, 1970, and it grows by 40,000 every single year, that's by guns, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's the highest,
40.
the leading cause of death in children,
Yep, last
American
year.
children.
Last year, won't happen anymore because the CDC will be gone.
Yeah.
Here's another question, basically. That you probably won't be able to answer, but actually, what do you think are some of the reasons why Americans seem to be so tolerant of this level? Because it is kind of, if you think about it objectively, comparatively.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's insane. What, half the country at least.
I mean, it is total insanity. I would say that through the years, I have noticed that, some people who are very, pro gun culture, pro Second Amendment, have said, especially, those who are hunters have said, this is getting a little out of hand. Like, these children die. I mean, I just read, actually, I went to St. Louis, Missouri 2 weeks ago for, Valentine's Day, gun violence vigil. And, because in St. Louis, they have a very hardly any laws, it's open carry state, and, they have had a increasing number of shootings, but also random shootings that aren't even necessarily planned in any way. So I went there, and there was a really moving documentary that was shown. And I really liked it so much because it was so realistic and sad. It was a story of a mother who had 2 children, and the husband's gun was behind the bed and it was loaded. And you can figure out the rest of the story. But the documentary was really moving to me because it was only 25 minutes long, but it stayed with her in her life and her daily struggle. It's really hard today. I've been thinking about him. And I think that our culture is so fast moving. I see the Facebook posts whenever there's like a mass shooting, people are like, I'm disgusted, this has gotta stop, blah, 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 blah. And then, a few news cycles later, I mean, at this point, the mass shootings aren't the focus of any real media reportage at this point. It's like faded.
There's,
There's a-
and there's really another side to this too. I mean, here, when you think about this nation, its founding, gun violence has been there in the front, everywhere, the American front, out west. It was guns, guns, guns. Yes, the shift nowadays, yeah, it's unfortunate, you know, that what's happening in the schools, but there's always been this undercurrent of violence. It's been there. Look at what we, you know, the white movement out west, what happened with the American Indian, you know, the wiped out guns. The bison wiped out guns. It's been there from day one. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but that's the truth.
And it's really hard. I think we're all like,
And the media really feeds on every bit of this. You know, right now, there's gonna be a meteor possibly crashing into planet Earth in 10 years. What a joke, you
Yeah,
know? But the media is fascinated with this, and they just eat it
And
up for money.
yeah, there's a part of me that is curious whether the white male is losing their hierarchy because of, and if we put all these different groups, the immigrants, the people who are coming here from the other countries and getting jobs I should have, this person, that person. But I mean, but is it, and I'm not criticizing all white males, but just just the general white males who feel as if they've lost out somewhere. It's like, I am currently on some Facebook page where I am defending the poor, disenfranchised, uneducated people who I work in Allegheny with. I used to work with, I'm retired now, this is 2 weeks as of today,
congratulations.
that I worked with in Allegheny County who grew up on Fox News, that do not have the wherewithal or even the ability to learn what is true and is not true, and tended to vote Republican because they believe the people who promised. And how many people are saying, but they're stupid and they should have known better. And I said, there you go, discriminating against an entire group of people who, I'm sorry, but I will feel really bad for them because they're gonna lose everything. They're gonna lose their Medicare. They're gonna lose their Social Security. They're gonna lose their food stamps. And they trusted this man.
I mean, that's a whole.
I was watching today, right before I came here, I was watching the end of this, little hour and a half program on eugenics. And those of you who know about the eugenics movement in the United States, it's another extension of white people fearing that they're gonna lose power. And there's a whole history of this. That dissertation that I wrote, I had to deal with a lot of eugenicists like Madison Grant and passing the Great Race and all this stuff. It's always been, along with the gun violence. It's kind of it's a bad combination. To say the least, however, that ethic kind of doesn't discriminate. When you absorb that culture, no matter what you look like or where you come from, you absorb that culture. There's a lot of gun violence in inner cities among Black and brown people too. It's not like there isn't. It's just for different reasons. But it's there. I mean, I don't really, I wonder, like, if it's possible to culturally, you know, I think of the poetry readings and poetry scene around the country as kind of an alternative to national media. Kind of is, but people do this all over the place. Yeah. But thousands of times a week in different parts of the country, what we're doing here. And is it oppositional completely to the guy down the block who has the proudly displayed in his window, this is a concealed carry establishment? And almost inevitably that is a white male who puts that in the window. I've never been able to figure out, is that because you want to let people know you have something in your pocket, or because you want other people to come in and start shooting up your stuff? If something happens, right, so it's, there, but there is that sort of, question of what to do. Yeah, I wonder, you know, have you thought about writing about what to do about this?
I mean, I will say, I think there is like an undercurrent of arrogance in the culture, for sure. I also think, just like as a side note, I think kind of a response to what you were saying about, you know, the genocide of Native Americans. I mean, we're all piecing together American history, like a little at a time, you know, and we're all coming to it from different vantage points, but there is so much that we really don't know. And I like to use the example of, like, you know, when my mother and father, they went out west, my mom wanted to see the buffalo. My mom loves buffaloes. But when she came back, I was probably 42 at the time. And that was the first time I ever heard her say genocide, the genocide of Native Americans. Like, she'd really taken it in when she was there. And I was 42. You know, it's really not a part of the dialogue.
Not anymore, anyway.
Have to go all the way, I mean, this entire area, there's a whole campaign, you know, the Sullivan Clinton campaign, that, essentially, you know, created the situation where the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois who were against the, who were Tories or sympathetic to the English were punished by the U.S. Army. And it's, I mean, there are markers throughout, you know, historical markers, but it's easy to forget, I suppose.
It's not
Oh,
No,
The Senator name for the president of the United States
Yes,
is Townsend.
yeah.
And it was from George Washington, the native people up this way, and when it's inundation, things like that.
Yeah.
Every president is called Townsend.
so John F. Kennedy went to the Seneca Nation and lied. And this is in a museum, a nice little museum. And he promised that he would not allow them to dam the river. And they voted for him. They actually put him over to win. And then he never, ever acknowledged what he owed them and allowed them to dam.
One of the whole trail broken.
I mean, politics is, really
Your
vicious.
poem about the young man did the shooting in the church in South Carolina, I believe it was. And he gave a little prelude to what he was thinking. Prelude went to the same guy that did all the shooting in the grocery store in Buffalo.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that also.
Huh?
Okay, not the same guy.
No,
Yeah,
different guy,
yeah,
but who had the same line.
okay, yeah.
Yes, like similar
They always
thinking
say,
about.
they always say there were 10 people murdered, but actually there were 12 people there, and he did not shoot anybody that was white. Only got black people.
The Tree of Life Synagogue.
He deliberately, I think he went to the supermarket the day before and checked it out.
That's right.
He also drove about 5 hours. He was from, Broome County, where I live.
And he had done research about
To kind
what
of-
communities would have the,
The greatest
Density.
density of population, that's right.
Well,
Based on it.
do we have any other questions for Jessica about?
I have one that I think would be quick. When you're writing obviously over a long period, trying to unify your work, and you're doing all this research, how to keep your emotional balance, because your subject matter is so intense, and I would think it could be so disheartening to spend so much time. It's in a good cause, but how do you keep your own equilibrium as a writer, a person?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I mean, I think it is my equilibrium in some ways. It's like, can be kind of down there for a long time. I think it can, I don't know. So, I mean, in the back of the book, there's a dedication to, this bar in Binghamton where I used to go. They had a week, before the pandemic, they had weekly poetry readings on Thursday night. And I was going to that every week for a long time. And there are people there who like were very supportive of me, like getting through it, because it wasn't easy to get through it.
Again, it's almost like counseling. You got through it by bringing it out and then sharing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there is, I mean, there's a lot of people who have like debates about, I do think there's a therapeutic element to poetry. Some people can get upset if you say that, like, it's my job.
I worked with two men who lived in the same housing. One of them had long gone on living morning, that one of them, the one, he was very ill and he had passed away sometime the night before. And then his roommate came for a crisis walk-in. And when he came in, I asked him, do you want to talk about your grief, or do you want to talk about him? And Joe Empties out there. Chose that. So,
We have one
Yeah.
more question there. I'll ask you a final.
Can I just ask you, your subject, it'd be hard to find one that's more timely, but it's so often dealt with journalistically. Could you say anything about the challenges of thinking about this poetically? And turning it into poetry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can say so much. I mean, I can say directly that the poem about the South Carolina shooting is me refuting the media. Because the media is constantly reporting on like these things, right? The Buffalo shooter was also thinking that Black men were taking over the nation. Nobody seems to get into that history, right? And there's a very lengthy history there, you know, of the fear of Black men, and it's rooted in slavery. And there are lots of books out there, but not a lot of people are reading them, you know. I think that, so I think I just wrote that part in frustration, of like, let's just put it all out here.
All those states, but you don't want people to read that stuff now.
What's
The
that?
states who don't.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
don't even
They're
get me
really-
started.
Okay, so what happens there?
Could you repeat the last thing you said? I didn't hear you.
There are states which now have laws, like Florida.
Right.
They have laws against presenting such material in school. So what happens? Nobody learns it.
Right. Got an educational crisis, basically, and the question is, how do we deal with it? How can we make it go away? How can we improve it?
I mean, I think it's a complete service. I mean, I almost can't even understand that, but I think it's people not wanting to reckon with history and not realize the history that the country has. I mean, I think that you know, in my forties, I wrote this poem. Did I know some of this history? Like, it took me like getting a PhD in English and having to read like all of these books and really starting to really wrap my head around. It's like, this was what was happening on these plantations. This is, you know, I mean, I have a family friend, and my parents went to Monticello, like, I don't know, 25 years ago. They didn't mention anything about slaves or Sally Hemings at all. It's actually like come a little bit more into the tour. I've never gone, but as people have told me that, you know, so it's really a history that is so removed from most people's lives, I think.
I think one thing people could do, just basically speaking, is less time in front of a screen and more time in front of an open book. You know, we don't read it, no, we don't allow ourselves to understand, to learn, you know, we're being lazy in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the phones are really huge challenges. I mean, I talk about it with my students. I'm like, I have the same challenges you have. I'm like, I'm obsessed with my phone too. I don't really want to be, but it is a hypnotic device. And I think that I don't know, I think there needs to be more reading, but it's really hard to read in this culture. I mean,
So on that score, we do get together and do this. And again, this happens a lot more than I think people realize. So, and this is centered on poetry, but not only. So are there 2 or 3 poets you would like people to read more of?
yeah, I will answer that question. I'll just say one thing in terms of I have no idea if this would take, but I love to read aloud, and that's I think, you know, when I was teaching in New York City, I realized that I wouldn't read aloud to my students. I had a blast. And read more than I was supposed to. You know, they're like, oh, they have to read on the exam on their own. I was like, I'm gonna read it. You know. But I wonder, I've thought of this, I've never been able to really arrange it, but like I love readings, I love poetry, community. What about if we walked in here with like everyone had their own copy of 1984 and we just read it aloud together? You know, I mean, it sounds silly almost, but it's really hard to read in this day and age. I mean, there have been articles in the New York Times, professors saying, I'm gonna assign one book this semester. You know, and I tell my students, I went to college before cell phones. And when I went to college, I had a really hard time keeping up with the reading load. And I didn't have a phone. Okay? So I just can't imagine.
I didn't even have a personal computer when I went to college, so, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
It's writing, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that's not a crazy suggestion. It's done. People do it. I was gonna bring some Sergei Jardin tonight because of what the shit show that happened in the Oval Office today. He's the national poet of the Ukraine. You know, but, yeah, we could. In fact, maybe we should.
Do it right now.
Yeah, not right now.
Plan it.
On that.
I mean, I think for like poets and stuff, I think it's a bit of a challenge for me. I came to poetry before I became a poet before I really was reading poetry. And so sometimes I feel like a little stumped with this question, but I love most poetry. I think there's so much good poetry out there.
Who's the last, what's the last, who was the last poet you read and really enjoyed? That would like to share. Thank you for sharing.
I mean, I will say, just off the top of my head, since I was like teaching like students how to write list poems this week, Araceli Gourmet has a poem. I'm actually not gonna remember the title, but it's kind of like, this is everyone I love, something like that. It's a very long and beautiful poem. When I was in St. Louis, Missouri, I was hosted by a lovely couple, and they made a fire and we were reading Wendell Berry poems, you know, I mean, there's just so much good stuff. I've been introduced to the poet Reuben Jackson, who was died about a year ago and died very early, and he's a wonderful poet.
That's a good reading. It's a
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, well, good, I hope I can help, I mean.
Well, thank you. We're gonna have to wrap it up. I hate to wrap it up, but we'll wrap it up. We'll take a little break and come back and share.
Okay, thanks so much, Bill, for meeting you all, have a good night.
And then he felt it all, and so he said, I'm gonna be really. I'm gonna take it.
Right.
Yeah. No, no. I was like, all right. I cannot.
Right.
Yeah. I know, I love it. I know,
And so now it's- So that's what Yeah, I just, I guess. It's not like you got a little. Yeah, that's what this now.
Yeah, so I grew up. Yeah. I used to teach at the community college. No, so you get something, I thought this very, election. And I was on the roll high school in California. I was civics. So it was. But you know, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I had a tour.
Yeah, and
You worry. You had to turn around yourself in California.
well, so, we lived in Northern.
I know.
Actually, the first month.
Yeah, well,
Every year, we had wildfires.
Folks, I'm gonna give you the 2-minute warning, okay? 2-minute warning, Don.
Like, south, north of San Francisco. Oh, yeah. Actually, so my Middletown, California, I was from down. Footage. We didn't even get the call. Much later. Very. You know.
We got a dog.
I was basically familiar with you, and I wanted to, and, the fire screen side. It just basically just.
Yeah.
And I don't think I stole this too. But I'm gonna pay this one. All yellow. They were mostly the short stories, but I just love.
I've read yeah.
Well, let me know. I think the first from Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so, we're back. We've got 7 people in the open mic, and so I'm gonna ask for, it's 7:45, so we're running a bit behind. I'm gonna ask for like 3 to 5 minutes. Scott, ready to kick us off?
Yeah.
All right, Scott Williams, everybody.
Do this. So, I have a brand new one for you. This is called The End of the Line. Mass transit. My father loved the terminus. On vehicles who sat together on side-facing seats, but rear windows were my favorite to look back while kneeling on the back seats we rode during segregation. His favorites were the trolleys we called streetcars. When rides ended, we sit there eating lunch, staring out at rivers, fields, or passengers waiting to enter. Trackless trolleys were fun at the end because the driver would exit to play with a pantograph. Those 2 poles seemed dangerous to me. In Baltimore, where I was raised in Baltimore, we'd ride the long North Avenue trolley, number 8. In Philly, we'd ride both subways to both ends. the New York City A train, Rockaway to Washington Heights. My students never guessed the next number in the sequence 4, 14, 34, 42, 59. 125th was Paula, my favorite, before a girlfriend lived above 145th. In Boston, the orange line we got on at my cousin's in Roxbury, but rode through tunnels to both ends. I don't remember what we rode on Chicago's CTA. In his 70s, he was bored by Buffalo's Sackey subway from the university to town center line, Metropolitan Center. When my parents visited me in Prague, we rode night trolley 18 and subways A, B, and C, which ended in the exurb near complexes. Before the interstates, there were turnpikes. Dad liked to drive to their ends. How fast can you drive Jersey or Quincy Turnpike without a speeding ticket at the end? We drove US Route 1 from Baltimore to Canada. 2 years after he died, I finished that job. I drove Route 1 with my daughters to Key West. Let's try another one. Fingers too fast here sometimes. So I said I was raised in Baltimore. White people call it Beemore. Black people call it Beamer. This is a round Beamer way. It's after that pretty good Pittsburgh poet and publisher, Lamont Steptoe. I say, back in the day, round Beamer way, Mama and I waited 3:15 for Papa with a Christmas tree to make up for the best stores where black folk can't enter doors. I say, back in the day, round Beamer way, on TV, white folks smile. For us, it's like drinking bile. And they call Christmas a happy time town. Really, that ne'er trickles on down. I say, back in the day, round Beamer way, Country Cullen was a whole lot bigger than that Beamer boy calling him nigger. Now it's red and white fat man's time to spit on our folks' little nickels and dimes. See us now, staring on down the road, awaiting a tree to ease our road, awaiting a little to ease our day, back in the day, round Beamer way. Let's see, I think I was through, here's another ball. It's called Pratt Library. Businessman, banker, and railroad man Enoch Pratt created book depositories for rich and poor without distinction of race and color. I've always wanted to live near an all-weather book collection whose dwellers sat in glass-faced protection shelves, whose touch warmed, cooled, dried, moisturized, and shot binders onto whose random wanderers. How I love the bookmobile, trailer truck with bookshelves that parked once a month, the time in which I could read 8 books. Just a mile and a half walk alone from the black neighborhood through fenced-in shotgun guarded white compound pearls. Kids could take 5 books home. When I read all the children's books, the kind white lady let me read adult books, on the premises, of course. When I read all the science fiction, the librarian introduced me to mystery, westerns, and travel. On my own, I discovered novels of history, sex, and yucky romance. Years later, mother, 2 buses, and an hour led to the stone monolith central library, whose chosen book room was triple the size of the first floor of a narrow row house home. A giant science fiction section could fly you on Doc Smith's inertialist drives up and away to any spot among stars, or have an aftermath I robot fly. There I read of the double slit experiment, subatomic particles and antimatter, Möbius strips, time bottles, and infinities. There I began intention to be the world's greatest scientist. I think it's.
John, on.
So this, so it's kind of been an interesting experience for me since I started coming here over a year ago, I think now. And it's kind of like when you drop a pebble in the pond and it just kind of spreads. So, I've really got, it started out, being single parent empty nester, trying to get out of the house and do something because they didn't want to sit around and stare at the TV all night. And, so they started getting into writing. And then just recently, I had a conversation with my daughter, and I didn't realize that my daughter is into poetry too. And we had a conversation about what her favorite poem is. I don't have anything original tonight, but I want to read her favorite poem as kind of a tribute to her, because she had an awful week where she's down in Albany and she had a billing come out, so she had to take a train Wednesday night up, go to the dentist Thursday morning, and then Thursday night take a train back to Albany. So we both have had a crazy week trying to make that happen. But her favorite poem is Epitaph by Baruch Malloy. So here goes. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that want wait to die. Oops, sorry. You think I would learn and write this stuff down. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you with something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Oh, and I'm still working on my presentation. My daughter actually really criticized me for that.
Everybody needs one of those. So Linda's credit. Linda knows also that.
I have 2 poems that I'm working on. The first one takes its title from the first line of an Emily Dickinson poem. And that line is, ashes denote what fire was. Ashes denote what fire was. Back when we all had hearts, we knew they were on fire. We were dry fields touched by lightning. Yet, even then, we rested, fresh harrowed, open to rain, the same ordinary earth, but hallowed. Now it's all just barbed wire, glass acres cooling, every surface crackled, angry, ready to shatter. When locusts devoured, we refused to learn lament. We let makeshift morgues remain unowned, lost, unwept. We thought we knew how to walk the line between ache and break, unscathed, unchanged, as if our glass hearts could never be ground back to sand. What's left of us is this small, dry sliding, each grain fierce against the next. Flint cadences, cries and whispers, breaking through the ash of lives in the stricken fields, green shoots that long to shelter in, be riven by every last heart of flame. Now, the second one is a local poem that's based on a visit that Stephen and I made to the George Eastman House. And the working title right now is Why Wait? Why wait at George Eastman House? We follow the docent's carefully coiffed, precisely tailored presence, her cloud of expensive perfume, her polished words opening glimpses of vast rooms and snug retreats of opulence. We've come to savor splendor, imagine parties in another time, potted palms and champagne, liaisons in the loggia, as if here we'd find that bow, golden or not, that always eludes us. In one room, silent figures flicker across a screen, cavorting on a cabin porch. They don't seem so different from us as their pratfalls of the rich and famous, atheistic joys for the camera. In the last room, we wonder at Eastman's Richard Cory choice, ponder the scrawled notes of comedy, silvered over with bravado. And then this is the lines that George Eastman wrote before Sean. My work is done. Why wait? And I think of my father in his 90s, recreating the mining town of his childhood, pit head, workers' houses, company store, in tissue box cardboard, buying new shoes, planting daffodils every fall, rich in hope of savoring one more gilt-edged spring.
Have you ever come to visiting the Eastman House? I think it's just.
Well, and he as my father did, had spinal stenosis or a little lung pain. He was only 77.
Yeah.
And,
Alt.
This should take about 3 minutes or so. Yeah, I guess you could say I'm going to extend the American gun theme a little bit here in a different direction, but, this was called Trident. Starts off pretty darkly and it gets lighter. Trident. What is Trident? Trident is a missile on a submarine cruising the oceans, cruising for peace, apocalypse in mind. What are Trident missiles fired together capable of doing? They explode. Like the little boy across Hiroshima, multiplied by 2040. They implode in our thoughts of Hiroshima. If shouted 2040 times, repeatedly, they take understanding past all limits to a place where screams continue for 17 hours straight. But the city's fire and death cannot be understood unless we've lived there and survived it by a miracle. So, what is trident? Trident is the turn we take while cruising for a difference. Trident is a three-pronged spear, a tool for understanding heart and mind and soul. A weapon for love and peace, a link to the whales that cruise within our dreams. The porpoise tail raised and the great blues, hot blood pumping, turning with the tide, Poseidon rising from the deep. Two paragraphs from Learning the Terrain. When I heard of the death and mayhem, I took solace in the creek. I fished it, knowing that the stream would comfort me and lighten my load. It did not spit in my face or take any side at all. It favored no religion or political agenda, no one theory or belief. The creek was simply there, cold and flowing bank to bank, clear and tumbling toward the distant bay. The stream was there to embrace me if I wanted it to care. It was there to reject me if I got in its way. I stood in its waters, feeling like the young musician who towed a grand piano to a site of death and terror. Towed it with a bike. The fellow could not raise the dead or heal the injured, but his playing helped to soothe the pain for a bit. An upstate farmer poet, his name was William Christman, was an influence on the way I approach poetry, I guess. And this man lived from 1865 to 1937. And it said that Christman did not begin writing a poem, being a very busy family guy and a very busy farmer. He didn't start until he was 59. Oh, I knew that, but just the other day, a friend of mine, Mark O'Brien, sent me an article he found in a little upstate newspaper, the Altamont, whatever, Altamont News, whatever. It was an article from 1932 or 4. And it relates an incident that I took and made a poem of it. So this is my take on how Will Christman began writing poetry at the age of 59. It's called From Poultry to Poetry, Better Late Than Never. In 1924, William W. Christman, Helder Hill farmer and family man, was 59 years old. He had yet to write a serious poem, but a pre-dawn incident changed him like an obad, filling a despondent lover with a song. He woke to the clatter coming from his chicken coops. He rose naked as a blue jay in a lilac bush and snuck out with a 12-gauge scattergun. Two figures laden with bulging sacks rushed out from the hen house. "Halt!" demanded Will. "Hands up now or else!" The figures, probably frightened, maybe not so much, ignored the future poet cutting to the chase. They ran, the gun raised, and the buckshot from one barrel split the morning air, but only grazed a runner's neck and face. It missed the sack of cackling chickens, cackling poultry, actually. On they raced, coming to a stop at the Delaware and Hudson Railroad Bridge near Quaker Street. Eventually, a sheriff intervened and later found 15 Plymouth Rocks and 15 Rhode Island Reds recuperating in the back of Earl and Oliver Snyder's beat-up Packard hidden in Williams Hollow. Christman, at age 59, had apprehended the notorious Snyder boys destined for an upstate prison. Christman, the lifelong farmer, grabbed the plow of poetry and pushed it toward a John Burroughs Medal awarded in 1934. He wrote invitations for a homecoming to the pine tree and the wild bird and the women he had loved. His chickens lived contentedly, emerging from the coop each dawn to peck at for the corn tossed near a poet's door.
Kevin, why? Kevin?
I will be less than 3 minutes. In that, I didn't prepare anything myself tonight for my, but I was rereading one of my favorite books, Mr. Sandler's Planet by Saul Bellow.
Yeah.
And considering that we're in a fairly tumultuous time societally, I reread the first paragraph's always been, it always has gotten me, but it made me think in a whole different way. And for anyone who has an inkling or inclination toward art or free speech, it makes me wonder what our role could be or what our role is. So I'm going to read a little background. The book is about a Holocaust survivor who finds himself in the sort of also tumultuous time of the late 60s, early 70s. So I'll begin. Shortly after dawn, or what would have been dawn in a normal sky, Mr. Arthur Sandler, with his bushy eye, took in the books and papers of his West Side bedroom and suspected strongly that they were the wrong books, the wrong papers. In a way, it did not matter much to a man of 70 plus and at leisure. You had to be a crank to insist on being right. Being right was largely a matter of explanations. Intellectual man had become an explaining creature. Fathers to children, wives to husbands, lecturers to listeners, experts to laymen, colleagues to colleagues, doctors to patients, man to his own soul explain. The roots of this, the causes of the other, the source of events, the history, the structure, the reasons why. For the most part, in one ear and out the other. The soul wanted what it wanted. It had its own natural knowledge. It sat unhappily on superstructures of explanation, poor bird, not knowing which way to fly.
Celia.
Very short and weird. Anybody notice it's gotten a little warmer? Maybe, I guess it's gonna get colder again, but, so this poem somehow, comes to the top of the pile. Every time about this year, it's a little on the early side, but it's called Femiani. Opening now, soon to close. Some must push hard, up through down branches, piled brown leaves, their new green corn. Yet they rise, lift heavy buds, unfurl three thin petals, bright white, touched deep red, yellow, wafting scents call to bees, beetles, flies, to dine and play in pollen just before petals fall.
Open mic.
I am happy today. It's been a good day today. The first reason that it has been a good day today is that Senpai Ravens, the local food pantry, dropped off a bag of food for me. And in that bag was a container of mangoes cubed and in a clear container like Wegmans does, because Wegmans donates to the food pantry. I have gotten to be 75 without ever trying mango.
Oh, really?
So, I got to try mango today. And it was okay. So this is what it came out. A mango's not a melon. A mango's not a lime. A mango is its own taste. And tango is its rhyme. I sort of like a mango. It's not a big romance. I should learn to tango. I could use the dance.
It's when you go crazy.
Yeah, make the man go crazy. All right. The other thing is that I'm actually out today. I was cleared. I've been pretty much isolated since October, like all winter. Because at the end of September, I had bilateral pulmonary embolisms. And so to catch a virus would be fatal. And so the doctor didn't want me going in there, and I didn't, which was a bitch. So I knit myself I knit a self-portrait, which is coming, but this is the yarn I use. Now, I love this yarn. First of all, it's very soft and squishy, it's great. But the colors, you see it's hand dyed, and it's got all these rainbow bright colors, because I have lots of bright colors in me. But the basic, there's some navy and some dark greens, some dark purples in here. It really is pretty much me. So I thought, well, I'll make a scarf. This is a self-portrait of where I am. And I chose to combine turquoise with this yarn because turquoise wouldn't be obliterated. The first thing I made with this, I used navy blue yarn to carry the rest of it. And all these dark colors completely disappeared. It's so much fun working and knitting as you go. And so this is turquoise. And I chose it for the aesthetic reasons, but also turquoise represents peace, calmness, introspection, healing. So I thought I should really use turquoise. So this is what I made. Now you will notice that it isn't quite done in that the little ends aren't woven in. And I had a whole pile of work at home where the ends aren't woven in, because that's the part I don't like. And I'm not really good at carrying through on things. I'm not good at starting with excitement, creativity and all that, but it's really hard for me to do grunt work. So this is a self-portrait. Now, this is me. Okay. And this is all these bright colors that you see, and this is the really cool thing about knitting with hand dyed yarn like that. It's a crapshoot. You don't know if it's going to work or not. Of course, with knitting, if you don't like the way it works, you can just, it takes about that much time to rip out what you did and start over again, which I do frequently. So I like the way this came out. It looks as though I was just a master of design. And then I I picked up the red, but also red was on my mind because of these damn blood clots. So this is where I was. If you'll notice, it's the same form, but there's no color there. Because the thing that makes my life colorful is you all. You all, it's being able to share. And for 5 damn months, I was not able to share, except I posted on Facebook and I didn't send Jordan occasionally. But so that's my self-portrait. And I'm going to share with you now a song that I haven't shared with anybody yet. And so it's kind of a work in progress. And we all know I'm not the greatest guitar player, but we'll do it. We'll see what happens.
You're okay.
We'll see what happens. You all ready? Because I'm nervous. When what you were is not what you are. You must do more than restring your guitar. You need to sit down and write a new tune. In a key that is low, with notes you can croon. Aging brings changes to one's way of being. It can be painful, it can be freeing. Sometimes what one needs is a new way of seeing. Open your eyes to what's on the next page and sing your new story of age. That song will reveal the love in your soul. To the people out there who help you feel whole. Yeah. Then you can live on the joy in your heart. Difference till it's time to depart. Aging brings changes to one's way of being. It can be painful and it can be freeing. Sometimes what one needs is a new way of seeing. Open your eyes to what's on the next page and sing your new story of age. It's not always easy to accomplish this task, but give it a go. That's all I ask. Changes to one's way of being. It can be painful, it can be free, and sometimes what one needs is a new way of seeing. Open your eyes, it's on the next page, and sing your new story of age. Now sing with me. I'm going to teach it to you and then we'll do it together. La 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 la. Sing it with me. La 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 la.
Turquoise, huh? Turquoise. Beth, I had turquoise paneling in my room when I was a little boy. It didn't help though. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming out. It's a really fun night. And next month we'll do it again. Next month is March. Oh my God, March 21st. I believe we have C. Williams from Erie, Pennsylvania, Kat Wolfer from Erie, Pennsylvania,
two very fine poets and performers gonna come and entertain. And I hope you all come back, and I hope it'll be at least as warm. We have a chance on March 21st, if it is at least as warm, maybe. And we're gonna go get some food if anyone's interested, probably down the